Welcome to the Commune podcast. My name is Jeff Krasno. Today, we'll be revisiting a conversation from 2024 with the extraordinary filmmaker, Louie Schwartzberg. Louie is best known for his breathtaking cinematography and deeply human storytelling that reminds us of all the wonder that is woven into everyday quotidian life. His films, including Fantastic Fungi, Wings of Life, and Gratitude Revealed, invite us to slow down and to pay attention and recover a sense of wonder and awe. This episode originally aired the week before Thanksgiving. I just hosted a little gathering to screen Gratitude Revealed, and afterwards I found myself noticing more of the little miracles in life. Louie's films really invite us into gratitude as a gateway for presence. So we're bringing this episode back today on Thanksgiving because this holiday is ultimately about presence. It's about noticing the little things, the warmth of a hand on your shoulder, the laughter in the next room, the steam rising from a bowl on the table. It's about recognizing that these ordinary moments in life are the good old days, right now, right here, while we're still living them. So my hope is that this conversation helps you slow down and take a few breaths, even for just a moment. So settle in and enjoy this encore of my conversation with Louie Schwartzberg. Okay, Louie Schwartzberg, welcome to the Commune podcast. I'm so grateful to be with you.
Great to be here with you, Jeff.
So the other night, I was mentioning to you yesterday that I had the opportunity to host a little party, a watch party for your new pièce de résistance. I'm practicing my French because I leave for Paris tomorrow, called Gratitude Revealed. And it's just a magnificent film, Louie. And thank you for your work over the decades, but particularly for this piece. And since watching it, I've been engaging in a variety of gratitude practices. And it is amazing that in a very short period of time, I feel this greater sense of effusiveness and beneficence. And I really credit the movie for being a bit of like an inflection point there for it. And of course, the film is right on time because this is the season. Just to timestamp our conversation here, we're speaking just a week before Thanksgiving. And, this is a time that is characteristic of slowing down a little bit and hunkering down with family and doing more cooking, and appreciating the smaller things in life. So I'm very excited to excavate all the dimensions of gratitude and its relationship with generosity and wonder and nature, and maybe even some of the practices that you engage in, and I'll share some of mine. But I wonder maybe if we could start here. There is a wonderful part of the film where you talk about the experience of being a cinematographer and a director, and part of that is experience is focusing on one thing and obscuring something else. So I was wondering, what was the inspiration to focus on this topic of gratitude?
Well, the section you're talking about, I think I'm talking about focus. And I have a problem with that in my life, actually. I mean, I get so inspired by ideas when you brainstorm, and then you want to do them. And so I know that I probably spread myself too thin in doing too many things. But in the movie, what I did was I used the cinematographer's point of view to use it as a metaphor for focus in terms of making choices in your life that are important, and having everything else be a distraction. So I showed that by, shallow depth of field. I focus on a close-up of a spider when everything else goes out of focus, or a hummingbird flying toward camera, and the background is out of focus. The value of that is that your eye goes right to the hummingbird. And as a cinematographer and the filmmaker, you direct the eye to where you want the audience to observe. But at the same time, it's a metaphor for life. What is most important in the choices that are in front of you? And perhaps choice is the most powerful power you have, to choose what is important in your life. You just mentioned like Thanksgiving's around the corner, but choosing to be with friends and family, having the joy of cooking a meal, or, it's like making those choices is how you art direct your life.
We can get into philosophical debates around the nature of determinism and free will, but what I've often found is that we do have some agency moment to moment of where to focus our attention. And there's like this wonderful Thich Nhat Hanh quote of, when you do the dishes, right? And there seems to be an element of gratitude or happiness, which is aligning your thoughts with your actions and being present in that way. And I'm wondering, as part of your creative process, do you find that phenomenon when you really are able to align your intention with action?
Definitely. But I think that what you said earlier, the goal of almost every spiritual practice is to be present, and like you say, when Thich Nhat Hanh, wash the dishes. Don't have your mind thinking about the past or the future, what you have to do and what you'd rather not be doing than the dishes. Be here now. And that's what I think gratitude is for me, because when you become present, then you become grateful. Grateful for the little things in life. Grateful that you're alive, grateful that you're breathing, grateful for this moment. It's the essence, I think, of being conscious. And it's very difficult in our culture and our society now to ever become present. And I think that's the battle we have now, because we have, all this competition for your attention, your eyeballs. It becomes now the new currency. It's more important than money. Is like, how many eyeballs do you have? How many followers do you have? How many likes do you have? And that becomes a battle of attention, and attention is the same word as consciousness. So if I have you, and unfortunately, we know politicians do this, with fear and being vulgar, I can grab your attention by being gross, that's the easy thing to do. It takes art to make you laugh, to make you cry, to grab your emotions that celebrate beauty and life. But the only way, I think, to combat the fear and the anxiety and the vulgar, conversation of politics is to be able to have an emotion that's more powerful than that. And I think that would be beauty, wonder, and awe.
Yeah, it's interesting because we know that gratitude, through all sorts of clinical research, and this guy Martin Seligman, who kind of pioneered positive psychology, and all of the studies that have been done on gratitude that point to higher levels of subjective well-being, less depression, less stress, more satisfaction with life, higher levels of purpose and growth. We know all of these things, yet we are experiencing in our culture these cresting rates of depression and loneliness. And I think, you speak right to the core of the issue, is that we are not cognitively designed to manage all of the input coming at us. And this is making, basically, our culture is inhibiting us from being able to cultivate true gratitude a lot of the time.
Yeah. And so for me, gratitude enables me to pull me out of that negative spiral. You watch the news, and you can get really depressed. And for me, it's a go-to that when I start finding myself being depressed, being rejected, feeling like a victim, happens to all of us all the time, happens to me, I should say, happens about all of us. I'm a human being. And when I think about what can I be grateful for, well, immediately I think about I have 5 fingers that move, that I'm breathing. I got 1 trillion cells in my body that are working in harmony. Like, it's only when you lose your health that you become grateful for the fact that you're healthy, And so I've discovered that you can't have a negative thought and a positive thought in your mind at the same time. So as soon as I think of something that's positive, it shuts down that negative feed that's going in my head, that spiral, that rumination that we all get stuck in, and it pulls me out of that feeling of being like I'm drowning. It brings me back to being alive, being back to being present, which brings you back to being grateful for the fact that I'm just here.
Beautifully put. As I mentioned, since watching the film, I've been on high alert for moments of gratitude. And I'm an avid tennis player, and I'm always challenging people half my age. But I was out there, playing this morning, getting my ass kicked, but I didn't care. And I really stopped at this moment between a game, and I engaged in this Stoic practice. So I'm super into Stoicism and the whole pursuit of eudaimonia, the good life. And Stoicism's funny because there's all these negative visualization techniques that you can use to essentially invoke a state of gratitude. So I played this little game with myself, and I said, what if this was the very last time I ever played tennis? I love hitting this yellow fuzzy ball around. It's basically like I have a meditation practice too, but it is like cognitive absence for me. I turn into like a canine. I just care about the flight of this fuzzy yellow orb. And I just stopped, and the sun was shining and my heart was beating, and I was 100% like all there. And oh my God, I have so much gratitude for this moment.
As I said at the end of my movie, I think gratitude is what you remember that warms your heart. When you think back to the Thanksgiving dinner that you had, when you look back at the moments when your kid was a baby and you see a baby picture and you get this warm feeling inside of you, just grateful for all of those things. So, yeah, I have nothing else that I can say I can solidly rely on to pull me out of a negative spiral. I can find it anywhere. I can find it in the alley, and that becomes an adventure, a journey into like discovering the beauty that surrounds me. And then that inspires wonder and curiosity, which is, I think, the intersection between art and science. And so, bingo, I'm on this journey and I'm back to being me and soaking up life.
We talked a little bit about how the attention economy contributes to distraction. Well, one of the other things it erodes is patience. And you are the encapsulation of patience. And one of the points that you made in the film that I thought was so insightful is that nature specifically requires patience. Can you pull on that thread a little bit?
Yeah, well, again, everyone's always remarking about, the beautiful time-lapse, flowers that I shoot. And you have to be patient. It could take you 3 or 4 days to get like a 4 or 5 second shot of a flower growing and opening. And what I really talk about is it takes trust, which I kind of learned that from Jack Kornfield, that patience and trust are really connected, because what I'm doing is I'm leaning into the intention that that flower will open up in frame, that it will be in focus, that it will be a beautiful shot. And nature will provide, if I trust, so that's what it really has taught me. The patience and trust are intertwined in a really beautiful way.
Another component to nature is that within nature, there is a natural arising of what is known as a coincidentia positorum, or the coincidence of opposites, where, you will have seasons of growth, and then you will have seasons of decay and repair. I mean, you made a whole movie about decay, basically, called Fantastic Fungi. Not really just about decay, but
No, but it can be, well, it's called either decay, but it's either the beginning of life or the end of life, but life's a circle, so, when things break down to their basic elements, it's for regeneration, for rebirth. And so it's just how you look at it, but it's a circle.
yeah, nature promises a spring with every winter. And I think when you become a student of nature, you surrender to this notion that life is as much falling apart as it is being reborn. And one of the other really insightful, very moving pieces of the film was the idea that you can be grateful for the things that you have. And there's also another Stoic practice called loving what you have, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But there is also gratitude to be had in suffering. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, because it does not seem obvious at first.
I love the line that Jack Kornfield says, like his Tibetan Buddhist teachers said that it's when you suffer that you open your heart, and that, it's not when you're like bouncing around, everything's great, but what gives you character are the challenges in your life. And I love the line when he says, and you don't have to pray for it, it will come.
Yes, exactly.
And so
I remember that line.
It's so good. Yeah. Don't worry, you have to pray for it, it will come. Because they pray for it. The Buddhists pray for it, which is really interesting. And so, look, I've gone through some, tough things occasionally in my life, and I've learned that it does open your heart in a much broader way. To experience, the ups and downs only makes you appreciate joy and happiness more. It does broaden your perspective, and it makes you a deeper, more caring, more compassionate human being. Without suffering, you really can't be compassionate.
Suffering helps cultivate compassion, or what Jack might refer to as karuna, which is really the identification of someone else's suffering as your own. But if you hadn't experienced it, the cultivation of that feeling is much more difficult to put your thumb on.
I mean, it's also, I don't know, the difference between that and empathy, like feeling bad for somebody else doesn't help them or you, right? Compassion is the proper way to, I think, to deal with that kind of a situation.
It's funny, Jack brought to my attention a particular kind of Buddhist meditation called Maranasati, which is the Stoics think of as memento mori, but essentially it's meditations on your own mortality. And so you sit in remembering your own death. And again, it's a bit of it can sound morbid, but it's only morbid if you fail to really see the point, because in sitting with your own inevitable mortality, again, you become more thankful and more appreciative for the fact that you are here and alive in the moment. And there's a whole genre of meditation dedicated to that. One of the other discussions that we had around the table after watching the film was, how do you move from gratitude as a state to gratitude as a trait? There are practices that you can engage in to elicit moments, maybe fleeting moments of gratitude. But there do seem to be people where gratitude is essentially become a bottom-up behavior, where it is a trait. It perfumes your whole life.
I think you see it in my movie in all the extraordinary, remarkable people that I filmed who are not famous. And basically, I selected people who had stories, who have passion and love in their lives and who have overcome adversity, but still have that emotion. I think passion for what you do and what you love to do is how you embody gratitude in every breath you take.
Yeah, I love the stories, the untold stories that you managed to excavate. How do you find these stories, Louie?
I love to tell stories about people who overcome adversity and have love in their life based on the fact that my parents were Holocaust survivors. They had a lot of love in their life. And I find that to be super inspirational. And so in the last 20 years, every time I was traveling across the country, I was looking for these stories. Before the internet, I would, ask local, TV stations, local newspapers, who was an interesting character, in that region. If I found myself in Vermont, I talked to the dairy farmer, found myself in the Mississippi Delta, speaking with Mosey Burke, a gospel singer. And again, it's pretty easy to ask people like what they're passionate about. And it just exudes this energy of, I'm just so grateful that I'm alive, even though I'm not famous, I'm having a giant impact on the world. And I think, now more than ever, we've really fallen into this terrible, celebrity worshiping thing, influencer thing. You can be a teenager now and be an influencer. And, most of the people I film are older. And I never really looked for people that were older, but it really helps to have a little bit of mileage under your belt in order to have a little bit of wisdom, And so those were the stories that attracted me, as well as the fact that I wanted it to be visual. It just couldn't be someone who was a great, software programmer, it needed to be, for me, it was something I could film outdoors. And look, my dad was a blue collar worker, I love blue collar workers. I mean, the salt of the earth, the work ethic, those are stories that inspire me.
One theme that seems to run across all of those stories, and I think specifically of the blues guitar player and the barber, these guys in this particular case, he has just a little barber shop in, somewhere that you've never heard of. And the guitar player was just completely satisfied and fulfilled with playing like the local juke joint. You know what I mean? It was like he wasn't chasing anything. He wasn't craving or striving. And like you say, everywhere we look, we're meant to feel inferior, that there are these images of unattainable perfection. We don't look good enough. We don't have enough wealth, etc. And that creates this culture of craving. And the stories that you manage to tell are really just fly in the face of that, of instead of craving or wanting more, a lot of these folks just recognize that their needs are completely met. And you encapsulate those stories with such grace and beautiful turns of phrase. It's such a delight.
Thank you. They're little jewels. And when you become the caretaker of these stories, it's a responsibility, to share them. And so to be able to, dig through my little archive of treasures and, pull these jewels out and figure out how to make a story out of it, how one links to the other, because all these values for me add up to gratitude, generosity, curiosity, creativity, wonder, love, um, all of these things add up, I think, to the umbrella emotion of gratitude. And I'm not a positive psychologist. I'm not a religious expert or spiritual anything. I'm just a filmmaker. But those values are the ones that, you can really focus on and tell a beautiful story. But the overarching story is about gratitude. In the movie, I don't tell anybody how to live their life. I don't tell anyone to practice gratitude. You're just looking at examples of people who, like Lynn Twist, is generous, like the rug weaver who's talking about self-discipline, or the blind ice climber, who talks about reaching out into the darkness. He's not telling you what to do. That's really important, and it's like looking into a mirror, looking into your own soul and saying, what can I learn from this experience? What can I take to heart and make my life better?
Yeah, great storytelling shows, it doesn't tell.
Yes.
And it's with any piece of art, when it's just right here in your journal or in your computer, then it's really all yours. But the moment that you press publish,
Right.
it really becomes a million films, or however many people watch it, in your case, tens and hundreds of millions, because everyone brings their own experience to it.
I know. And what's great, Jeff? We've had a lot of great reviews, critic reviews. One critic, a critic is a critic. That means he's a bit judgmental. He called himself a curmudgeon. And he goes, what do we need a film about gratitude? And and I'm going, oh my God, this is going to be terrible. And then about a couple of paragraphs in, he said it changed his life watching the movie. He started off in a very negative point of view. Just by the title, Gratitude Revealed, was enough to get him going, And so I really love the fact that I think the film is a mirror into our soul. And every time I hear like the positive stuff, it's just a reflection of who that individual is. Every time we do a screening, and luckily I'm there for a Q&A or something, people come up to me and they're gushing and they're crying and they're going, oh my God, how beautiful. And you're so amazing. I go, no, you are amazing. You've got the big heart. You took it all the way in, you started crying. There's nothing really sad in the movie. It touched your soul. And I appreciate the fact you're feeling it in a deep way. I love you for that. You're great.
When I cried in the movie?
I do. I'm going to guess. I think the animation, was it the animation part with the old couple?
Exactly. So you nailed it. So I know Adam pretty well.
Oh, cool.
So there's a poet named InQ. And I hadn't seen that animation in a couple of years, but so I've been with my better three quarters, I call her, for 36 years now. And I couldn't imagine living without her, really. It's funny, my daughter, a few years ago, as I was putting her to bed, as I mentioned, I always read to them when I put them to bed, and she asked me, Daddy, if you could have one wish, what would it be? And it really stumped me, and I took it away. I didn't have an answer for her. And 3 or 4 nights later, I said, I think I have an answer for you, Micah. That's my little one, Micah. And it sounds a little bit morose, but I said, my wish is that your mommy and I, a long time from now, will die on the same day. And watching that animation kind of brought me back to that moment and that wish. And it brought me back to this time right now, that she doesn't have to be gone for me to really love her or miss her, or there's this concept again in Stoicism that I've been drilling into called present moment nostalgia. And you're probably old enough to remember Carly Simon. She had this song called Anticipation. It's a wonderful song. And there's a refrain at the end that goes, and these are the good old days. These are the good old days. Sorry, not a singer, obviously. But that line, these are the good old days. Obviously we experience nostalgia, which literally means our pain, but we experience nostalgia as this kind of delightful wistfulness that happens in the past. But what I've been trying to exercise is present moment nostalgia, where you can actually have that feeling for now.
Right.
Maybe you could talk about beauty for a minute.
Sure.
There is a line that you have, which I've heard you say, which is, beauty is nature's tool for survival. I love that. How did you land on that?
I can find a fire hydrant to be beautiful. Okay. It all depends on why it connects with me. I ask why. It isn't just, oh, it's pretty, move on. And one other thing, I think it relates to the movie. People say, oh my God, your film is so beautiful. The cinematography is really beautiful. Duh. It's like, it's the secret. It's part of the story, dude. I'm seducing you to fall in love with these people. I'm not going to shoot you in ugly light. I'm not going to shoot you silhouetted in black. I'm going to shoot you with light that enhances your story. And that is an emotional trigger that I'm pressing inside of you that you don't have to be conscious of. But that's what I'm doing. I'm enhancing, just like I enhance the story with music in the background that you're not always conscious of, that all of it adds up to, I want to give you the most powerful emotional connection I possibly can deliver.
Yeah. Well, this is why we're so attracted to epiphanous art. We want to be manipulated.
Yeah.
We want to be carried away. We want to be all in. And you don't disappoint in that regard. I mean, sometimes when I'm, immerse myself in nature, and that could just be like, I live in Laurel Canyon. It could just be right here taking a hike in my neighborhood. And I'm the freak, like on the sidewalk that's kind of kneeling down with their nose in some plant. And like people are like, is that guy okay? I'm more than okay though, because I'm often, there's these wonderful white roses up here, and they just are so aromatic that even if I just stop and smell them for a minute when I'm walking up to the top of Mulholland, I'm just, oh my God. I mean, this is like, what is the improbability of something being so redolent and aromatic? I mean, that is just amazing. The only proper response is gratitude at that juncture.
Totally. And like, it's good to relish it, because we don't, like, we just move on to the next thing, the next problem. And just like that old trite phrase, stop and smell the roses, is really true. And I dwell in it. Like, actually, it's really interesting with aroma. You can smell the rose once or twice and it's gone, because your olfactory nerves, they need to recharge. It's almost like making love. You just can't make love all day long. You need a bit of a recharge, but because smell is so powerful, that sensual feeling of aromatherapy, it would be pretty addictive if you had that intense first inhale over and over. It's really interesting. I mean, try it next time you go by those white roses. You'll take one inhale, it'll smell great. Second one will be good. Third one, you won't smell anything at all. Maybe there's something there that you'll have a chance to pontificate on as to why that's true. But these peak moments, they come and go, And so when they happen, we need to develop a skill set of relishing it. Like you said earlier, the brain is more predisposed to negative than positive because of survival instinct and all of that. Fear, easy one to press the button. So when good things happen, I'm trying to myself learn to savor the moment, to hang in there.
I love that, Louie. There's a word in Chinese called Li, and there's no real translation for it as usual. But the best translation is the markings in jade. But it could really also refer to the kind of striations of muscle or the swirl in marble and or the course of water. But in the morning after I watched the film, I was in the sauna. I was taking a sauna, and it was a wonderful cedar sauna. And it got really nice and warm, and I kind of get into a little breathing routine, and I'm just really very comfortable and very open. And I started staring at the grain in wood, which really represents the natural flow of sap.
The reason why, not only is it beautiful, it is healing. Like the moving arts series I have on Netflix, I've gotten hundreds of comments where people claim that it's a healing modality. Everything from children with autism having major breakthroughs, teenagers that are suicidal, people with cancer, people with depression, post-op, pre-op, end-of-life anxiety. And I'm basically just showing rhythms and patterns of nature and my thinking as to why is it so powerful. Not that it's just, nice and beautiful and soothing. Why do people claim that it's a healing modality? It's because it's reflecting everything that's going on inside your body. Those rhythms and patterns look like the cells in your body, And so you're recognizing yourself. And I think every cell in your body is rejoicing, going, I know you, you're me. I get it. This is universal energy. This is how life works. This is how energy moves throughout the universe. I'm looking at how it works. And that's who I am. My body is that. We're not aware of that very much, but osmosis, all the scientific words of these like functional things that are going on inside of 1 trillion cells in your body that fucking works is a miracle. And when it looks at itself, it goes, yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of life going forward. I want to be part of a flower that's blooming. I want to be part of life energy because life is a force of energy, and I identify with it. And because I identify with it, I feel good.
So beautiful. And we're just links in this continuous chain of energy transferal. Again, in the alpenglow of watching the film, I started to think about, that all of these atoms self-assembled into cells that then created organs that somehow function together in this symphony that allows me to be here with you right now. I mean, if that's not a miracle to be grateful for, I mean, what the heck is,
Exactly.
Yeah. I started thinking about just the fusion reaction in the sun that produces a photon that travels to the chloroplast in a leaf that triggers photosynthesis to transfer light energy into chemical energy. And to create an apple just right at the perfect height. So I can walk around and just pick it and I can eat that and unlock that chemical energy into mechanical energy. And I mean, it's just nuts, man. It's like, we have so much to be grateful for if we just stop and pay attention to it.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Well, Louie, I am such an admirer of your work, and you do the world such a great service. It's really fascinating to hear about how moving art has become a therapy for so many people, but also just as a collector of stories. You just really have a way of bending the arc of what it's like to be alive. And I'm very grateful for that.
So am I, and I'm grateful for the fact that you're telling all these interviewing all these great thought leaders and sharing your podcast with the world. And we're definitely at a critical time of shifting consciousness. Because we do have these this time clock of environmental degradation, and we don't want to get into a downer at the end of this conversation. But when there's breakdown, there's breakthrough, and this is a time in history that I think we all chose to be Jedi warriors, to kick some butt, make it happen, need to change. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I'm with you. Count me as a supporter. I'm right beside you, locked in arms. I hope this can be a conversation to be continued, because I'd love to do another session on fungi in particular, because I'm a mycelium network nut, and I'm a big regenerative agriculture supporter, and I work with a lot of nonprofits in that space. And when you were talking about how mycelium networks look like neural ganglia, look like your respiratory system, also looks like a fistful of sprouts or a tree or a broccoli spear or whatever. Life is bushy when nature creates bushiness and clumpiness when unimpeded. And, if you look around the world, we're starting to become this very flat world with spikes at the edges, like when three dudes have more collective wealth than the 50% of the rest of the people combined, or when there's 100 billion sheep, cattle, and pigs and people and no other biodiversity. We need clumpiness. So hopefully we can talk about mycelium networks on the next one.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more of my weekly musings, along with ad-free episodes and live stream conversations, head over to my Substack at jeffkrasno.substack.com. I also want to let you know about our course platform over on Commune, which contains over 3,000 lessons and practices from the world's leading integrative medicine doctors, health experts, and yoga, fitness, and mindfulness teachers. It's a living library for holistic well-being, and you can try it for free for 14 days at onecommune.com/try commune. As a reminder, the audio version of my new book, Good Stress, is available on Audible, and you can listen to it for free as part of your premium Spotify membership. And if you prefer the old school analog option, well, you can pick up a dusty old scroll at goodstress.com and get over $900 worth of bonus courses from some of my biggest influences, including Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Zach Bush, and Dr. Gabor Mate. As always, feel free to reach out to me with comments, questions, or criticism of the constructive variety at jeffk@onecommune.com. Okay, that's all from the Commune for today. My name is Jeff Krasno, and I am here for you.